Hi, my name is Simon Fraser. I draw comics, I write comics, and I run the Act-I-Vate comics web portal. And I spend a lot of time sitting in this chair. Well, I run Act-I-Vate Comics, which is a web portal for web comics. It's an online laboratory for web comics. And it's a platform where we aggregate attention so that each individual person isn't obliged to look for their own audience. We can bring our own audiences together as a group. And Act-I-Vate has more than 40 or 50 members now. Probably the most famous things, Billy Dogma from Dean Haspiel. We've had Persimmon Cup, which is Nick Bertozzi's book. My own project, Lily Mackenzie and the Minds of Charybdis, which came out a few years ago, which has been printed in 2018 Judge Dredd magazine. And I've published that as a small book, which I sell at conventions, not otherwise. So if you see me at a convention, ask about that. When I started out in comics to making a living at it, I mean, I did some little indie stuff early on and some self-published, but the first people to pay me properly were 2000 AD. So that was Nikolai Dante was the bulk of it, 15-year project. But I've also done things like Shimura, which is with Robbie Morrison as well. That was an earlier thing we did about sci-fi samurai. Then I've done Judge Dredd with a variety of different writers, which is always fun because you grew up with Dredd as a British person. Dredd is our Superman, our Batman. He's that character, and so iconic character. So we kind of all aspire to do that a little bit. But Nikolai Dante was the bulk of my work with 2000 AD, which went through a 15-year arc, which is unusual because it almost never happens to have a plan that long in comics at all. I mean, it never happens. You've one creative team for that long. At the moment, I'm working on Doctor Who for Titan, the new Titan edition of Doctor Who, and that's the bulk of my work right now. And I've also done Lily Mackenzie, which is my self-published thing, which I do on Act-I-Vate. So this is The Adventures of Nikolai Dante, which is a sci-fi swashbuckler, broadly speaking. It's set in the Russia of the far future, so it starts in the year 2666. It's the Russia extrapolated from the Napoleonic era Russia. We don't reference real history in this, we're just making this up as we go along. So we get to use an awful lot of the same tropes from that era, the cool military uniforms, but at the same time, while everyone's carrying cavalry sabers, they're flying around on robot horses. So we're having our cake and eating it. We're doing a historical drama which is in the future. Nikolai Dante is a swashbuckler. He's actually a thief. He starts out the story, he's a petty thief in the streets of St. Petersburg. And as the story develops, we realize that he actually is a lot more than that, and he is the son of a noble family illegitimately. And he actually has a certain genetic legacy which allows him to take advantage of certain technology, and he ends up with superpowers effectively in that sense. Though he's not a superhero. All he really wants to do is get laid and get drunk, and slowly over the story, and this is a 15-year saga, so it takes a long time to get him to this position, he acquires a sense of responsibility and starts to grow up. He becomes a revolutionary hero and leader, and it's a grand family drama as well, so there's an awful lot of skullduggery going on there too. So it's a large, sprawling, romantic epic. It is hugely fun, and it was hugely fun to work on, and it is hugely fun to read again. So, strangely enough, now from this distance, I'm reading again going, oh, that's kind of good. Lily Mackenzie is the story of a barmaid and a ship's electrician in space. It is, again, a family saga, strangely enough. About friends who have to do things which are not necessarily within their skill set. It's about a rescue mission where my character Lily Mackenzie has to rescue her brother from a prison planet. We're not sure how he got there, and there's certain mysteries which she discovers as she goes, that things are not as she thought they were. And as we go, we discover a certain amount about her family, which is ultimately the way the story's going to go. This is the first volume. We're going to do 3 stories in the saga, and the second volume, which I'm working on right now, which is on Act-I-Vate Comics. And the idea is that we explore her family drama, and at the moment the first story is really personal on such a small scale. And they're already totally out of their depth, so by the time we get to the third volume, hopefully it'll be complete panic. What I wanted to do with Lily Mackenzie, my specific goal was to try and ratchet back the sci-fi tropes and make it much more near-world sci-fi, not so fantastical. There aren't really the technology you'd expect to see in Star Trek or something like that. I want it to be much more approachable. I want the technology to be much more scary, low-tech sci-fi, things where we're not quite there with things, when it's like descending from orbit through the atmosphere is terrifying. So a lot of Lily Mackenzie is about trying to survive against nature and trying to survive in space rather than the grand world-spanning, dimension hopping or kind of sci-fi, which is a little bit too, the technology basically solves all the problems, and I don't find that so interesting. So I like this near sci-fi where things are scary and difficult, and the technology is much more fallible. It resonates with me because I know technology, and technology will always let you down. So that's my theory for Lily Mackenzie. Comics are a tremendous escape. I mean, any kid who reads comics is looking for new worlds to go into. I'm a sci-fi geek kid. I grew up in the 70s, so for sci-fi, that was a very limited time. There was Doctor Who. In Britain, there was Blake 7, if you were into some obscure stuff like Sapphire and Steel in the early 80s. And then there was Star Trek from America, and Star Trek was rather polished and sort of rather too nice. And I read a lot of things like Harry Harrison and Asimov and Heinlein and people like that. So that's kind of sci-fi, but there wasn't much sci-fi on the movies yet. I mean, Star Wars kicked it off, and then there was some things after that. But you remember there was like 4 years between the first and second Star Wars movie, so it was a long time growing up without anything. So comics were that. Comics with 2000 AD especially was that fix of sci-fi action, excitement, and that kind of like hardcore cynical worldview, which is very 2000 AD, which carries forward into everything I do now to a certain extent. You have to be a little bit skeptical, and 2080's got that kind of mindset, that kind of punk aesthetic, which really I really is part of how I think now. So comics were very much how I grew up and how my escape, and that's where I looked for things that were not as the world was being delivered to me by the grown-up world, shall we say. I think comics are great for that. They kind of sneak under the radar for a lot of people, and they give you interesting worlds to see. And I like that as a creator, that's fascinating for me, world building, creating new worlds, creating new ideas, new realities.
Thank you for watching Beyond the Longbox.
If you enjoy the show and would like to see more, please hit subscribe, and we'll continue to bring you the best in comics.
My name is Simon Fraser. I'm a blah-de-blah. By night, I'm a cage fighter, whatever.
I swing from the rooftops on nylon cords.
Worship me!